kind of independent of the other ones. But if you look at the chapter right before this particular chapter, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions very clearly, where is it? In Surat Al-Isra, in the last verses of Surat Al-Isra, Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us to recite, to thank Allah, to thank Allah that, I'll say here the last verse, just so we're all there, that we're praising Allah who has neither taken himself a son, nor any partner, or in his kingdom, and he's not in need of anyone at all, of any weakness at all. And something else he mentioned, so Allah just will glorify him in a manner that's worthy of his majesty. Now, if you look at Surat Al-Kahf, the beginning of Surat Al-Kahf starts out with also Alhamd. And it's thanking, and we're saying Alhamdulillah alladhi, that we're thanking Allah that who sent down the scripture that doesn't have any crookedness in it. The scripture to his abid, and abid in this case is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Peace and blessings be upon him. This chapter was actually revealed in Medina, although some of the scholars, in Mecca, although some of the scholars said the first few verses were actually revealed in Medina. And some background behind it, there was just two people from amongst the people in Mecca that they went to who? They went to the Jewish community and they said, you people have been given scripture before. There's a man amongst us who claims that he's a prophet. Okay? So we need to know, is this man a prophet or is he actually a soothsayer? Is there something that you know in your scriptures that you can test if he's a prophet? They said, yes, ask him about three things. They said, ask him about the story of the young men of the cave. In fact, it's a amazing one. It's a miraculous story. Then they asked him about that. They asked him to tell them about the man who ruled from the east and the west, right? Dhul Qarnayn. And then they said, and finally, have him tell you about the ruh, the soul. If he can answer these three things for you, he's in fact a messenger. And if he can't, then he's a soothsayer. So they went back and they said, this is pretty simple, 3 questions. Here, come answer them. They went to the Prophet ﷺ and they said A, B, C, D. The Prophet ﷺ said, tomorrow, come return to me tomorrow and I'll inform you of those 3 things. Right? What was the mistake the Prophet ﷺ did?
He didn't say inshallah.
Right, he didn't say inshallah. And that's where you'll find later on the story of Al-Khidr and Musa, that's what that whole test and that trial is that there's only so much a human person can do, and if you think that you have all the ability to do these things, never forget it is by the will of Allah. And sometimes we all forget. It's out of just being forgetful, and he didn't do it on purpose, obviously. He sees Jibreel, the angel Gabriel, all the time. So he figured, okay, when I meet with Jibreel tonight, then we'll talk about it, and then I'll be able to give them this information. But actually, for the next 15 days, Jibreel doesn't come down and give any revelation to the Prophet ﷺ. So then they started cheering. They started being very boastful. They said, oh, it turns out he was a fake. So he doesn't know anything. And they're getting very happy. And the Prophet ﷺ got a little sad. Until Allah Azza wa Jal actually revealed the Surat Al-Kahf to him. And it starts out with this ilm, understanding the knowledge of this religion and understanding how we in fact apply it. So Allah just says, Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab wa lam yaj'al lahu iwaja. That we should be saying, this is us, we should be saying all praises due to Allah, should go back to Allah, thanking Allah. There's a difference between alhamd, understand this very clearly. A person in any type of situation you're put in, you always say Alhamdulillah. That all praises be to Allah. Why? Because sometimes you're put in a situation that you think is a bad situation, but it leads to a good situation. You just don't see it. Hindsight's 20/20. You only see what's right in front of you. And then yet you move on, and then you see something that's in a very, very good situation, and you think this is the best that it could possibly get. But little do you know that there's something better that's coming out for you. Or maybe this situation is going to lead you to something bad. So that's why Allah Azza wa Jal tells us very clearly that maybe it is something that you dislike, but it's good for you. And maybe it's something that is good for you, but you dislike. But Allah knows best and you don't know. Right? And this is something you have to take a look at how alhamd is used. Any situation, alhamd can be used, which is praising Allah. But the shukr, which is thanking Allah, is only used in good situations. Right? So it's not like you went and you were driving and you had a car accident and you go, oh, thank God. Like, why? Why would you thank God that you had a car accident? You could say, all praises be to Allah. You could say, Alhamdulillah, because maybe you were prevented from something else. You know how many people I know leave to school, to class, or to work just a little bit late because, for example, their mom said, oh, you forgot to take out the trash, and quick before they come and pick it up, pull the can out to the curb, and you're like, oh my God, I'm like so late, but you know what, I'll do it. You go back and you go take the quick can, takes you less than 5 minutes, and then you go on your way. And as you're driving on the highway, you found that there was an accident that just happened maybe a minute or two ago. And you're thinking like for a second, well, that could have possibly been me. But you see, certain things that happen in your lifetime, you just have no idea how they work. But you always come back and say, Alhamdulillah. In this case, Allah is telling you that you should be thanking Allah that He revealed, Alhamdulillah, alladhi anzala, the one who sent down. There's a difference between anzala and nazzala. Just so you're aware. I'm not going to go into this level of explanation in the future ones. Just because it's these first 8 verses, so you understand how important ilm is. The next one, we're going to go more theme-based in understanding how to apply that in your lives. The next 3 lectures, inshallah. But here, when Allah just says anzala, that means that He is sending revelation down from the Lawh al-Mahfuz, from the preserved tablets to his slave, to his abid, ala abidihi. You see, when Allah just says nazzala, that means Allah Azza wa Jal is responding to a particular event. So it comes in 2 different ways. Okay. Ala abdihi wa lam yaj'al lahu iwaja. And then he's also saying that there is no crookedness in this message. You're going to find another theme in Surat Al-Kahf. Allah Azza wa Jal uses opposites a lot. Allah uses opposites a lot. And I'm going to challenge you in these first 8 verses to see and find where the opposites are. Right? So he says that there is no crookedness at all. Why? Because he says, قَيِّمًا لِيُنذِرَ بَأْسًا شَدِيدًا مِنْ لَدُنْهُ وَيُبَشِّرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا حَسَنًا. That he says, and he has made it straight to give a warning to the disbelievers of a severe punishment from him, and to give glad tidings to the believers who are believing in the oneness of Allah, Tawheed, which is Islam, right? Who do righteous deeds, and they shall have a fair reward for them, paradise. This is very important because Allah is showing you the contrast here. There are a lot of religions, when you sit down and you have a discussion with them, and you should be having a discussion with them, you know, after you read your Quran and you're very knowledgeable about it, as much as you can, and you could do this continuously. Actually, you could do this simultaneously, in parallel. It's not like, look, let me study this for 10 years, and then I'll go out and I'll start talking to different people about what their beliefs are. And you could do this now. You literally could do this now. How many people has had a Jehovah Witness knock on their door? They're doing a good job then. You see, there's evidence, I'm serious. Everyone raised their hand. And a lot of times, you can have a discussion with them, and after about a half hour, there was one particular woman. I told her, I said, you attributed a son to God. I said, what if you're wrong? And what if God is upset with that? So she just paused. I said, just what if you're wrong? Like, what if you're wrong? And you met with the Lord on the day of judgment, and all of a sudden he's extremely upset with you because you said he had a son. And she was so puzzled. I guess she never thought about it from that direction. You see, when Allah Azza wa Jal revealed this scripture to us, He gave us the answers to anything you possibly need to know that you're going to come across in your lifetime from now until the day of judgment, so that you can recognize the straight path. As-sirat al-mustaqim, the straight path, the singular straight path. You see, that's very, very important. So that we should be thanking Allah for that. A lot of questions we ask our Christian fellows and our Jewish community fellows, they don't have answers for, right? And a lot of it, their interpretations of what their scholars have added to it. I mean, when they don't like certain things, or they feel that it no longer applies to modern day society, they update their book, right? One of the latest update to the Bible was they took out the word booty, which is, spoils of war. They said, well, the new generation doesn't use that word the same way it was used in historic times. So they just updated it. Little things like that, rather than just say that this is what the word meant. You see the difference here? That we can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. The verse is there. It's written in stone. It's not changing. And if somebody has misinterpreted it, remember like when we were going over the marriage prep, and some people misunderstanding about fadribuhun, which is like, and reprimand them by hitting them. Some people went far off the beating path with that, right? They misunderstood this completely. Now, if we wanted to follow this same process, the same methodology, well, it's not what it meant back. Everyone understood it that way, but let's change it to the rule of thumb. Actually, I don't know how true this is. Someone told me that the rule of thumb was actually it was actually started on the thickness of the stick you would use to beat your wife, which is insane. So, and everyone's just using it around today. I'm just waiting for the feminists to grab hold of that, right? So they can just shatter everything. What did you just say? Rule of thumb? Oh, and then they start that, and you got to resign and apologize and all this weird stuff, right? But you see, we could sit there and then update it. Rather, we don't. We sit there, we'll sit here and explain, look, here's how it needs to be understood. That verse isn't changing. The Quran is not changing. The life of the Prophet isn't changing. We don't just innovate stuff. Well, no, we don't. This is how it was. You misunderstood it. Here's the evidence how you misunderstood it. You see the difference here? And then you don't have to be apologetic behind that moving forward. There's a lot of people who take the verse, and the way that they start innovating in the religion is they start changing its meaning completely, right? And that's something you have to really take a step back from, because that is distorting the knowledge. Allah said He sent it very clear without any crookedness whatsoever. Also, there's a thing I want you to think about. In your language, we use opposites a lot to describe things, right? And we do that. And I want you guys, just for a moment, to think of like a proverb or some statement that you guys might use that has an opposite in it. Like, I'll give you an example. A lot of times people say, it's cold as hell out here. We know hell is quite the hot place. And then you sit there and you say, well, it's cold as hell. But you see how we just understand that everybody knows. And then you say, one person's trash is another person's treasure. So there's opposites there, but you understand the meaning and the wisdom behind it. It gets the picture painted. I have a few written down. I'm just curious if I don't have any that, the new guys are coming up with these days. Yeah, there's some weird statements you guys are saying. They don't even make sense, by the way. So I'm not giving you guys credit there. What was one of them? I don't know. Yeet? What on earth? I don't know, I swear Allah, I heard that once, and I don't know what he was saying.
I don't know what that means.
That you don't know? Oh, you're old. Huh?
It doesn't really have a meaning. It's like, when something good happens, you're like, yeet.
I
don't say it, I'm saying it.
No, you don't? No, you just Googled it, huh? We need a dictionary. We need a new dictionary. So who can think of some opposites that we've got in language? Nothing? We just go straight forward. You're nice, you suck, period. Let's move on. There's an opposite for you. This is a problem when you ask people from Jersey. They're very straightforward. You can't be that way, by the way, moving forward. You got to be a little bit nicer, and you got to change the way you go about life. Anyhow, they also say, for example, a leader is a slave to his people. Right? A leader is a slave to his people. All right? You look at Surat An-Nur, it has light and it has darkness in it. Okay? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that when the Dajjal comes, even we have this throughout the Quran and the Sunnah, he mentions that he will have a cool drink for you and also a boiling hot drink. Right? And talk about the fitna of the Dajjal, which we're going to cover. It's, I'm not sure if we're going to cover that. Wow, time. It's amazing. So, the Prophet ﷺ said, take the hot drink. He said, did you know what kind of iman that is? I don't think you guys realize that, man. Just that one hadith shows you the kind of fitna that people need to be ready for. A scolding, I'm talking, you ever boil tea? Like the little teapot? I'm talking grab that drink, scalding hot, and start chugging. Literally, I promise you to Allah, there's 0 people who would do that here. But the Prophet ﷺ said if you came across that fitna, he even told you if you heard the Dajjal is coming your way, you leave. Go in the opposite direction. Right? He said if the time of the Dajjal comes, he said go to Asham, which is the area of Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Palestine, right? That's Asham. Been chopped up through colonialism and that disaster. We don't need to get into that, but that's one area. That's considered one area. And he said, when that fitna comes to you towards the end of time, that is the safest place to be. And obviously, everything falls in line. Isn't it amazing that if you take any single narration, you'll find that other ayat are perfectly in line with it. Where does Isa come, the Prophet Jesus, when he descends back down to earth? Where does he come? No, not Jerusalem. He comes down in Damascus. He comes down. You said Damascus? Oh, Damascus, because that's pure Egypt right there, man. Man, I know Egyptians. The Adam came in Egypt. He everything happened there. No, but okay. I'm glad you said yes, Damascus. So actually, Damascus, and there's even a masjid that the Prophet ﷺ described for us, a white masjid. But here's the interesting part. At the time of the Prophet, that masjid wasn't white. You see. It was Christians and the Catholics, I don't know which denomination exactly, they had been governing that area, and that was a temple for them, and they renovated it white, with marbles and marble white and things like that. And later on, because of the sheer amount of people who started accepting Islam, that was later turned into a masjid. And you can go and look that history up. So that was one of the evidences that the Prophet ﷺ was in fact a prophet. He's just mentioned that. And then you come back and say that there needs to be a balance, right? Because here Allah Azza wa Jalla said, مَاكِثِينَ فِيهِ أَبَدًا وَيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. That they shall abide in there forever, those people who are disbelievers and they're attributing sons to Allah, they shall abide in there forever. Who attributes sons to Allah? Christians. Who else? You see, when we read this verse, we immediately think the Christians assign a son to God. But what you miss is that actually every type of people did it at one point in time. Even the Jewish people, a group of them, considered Uzair, Ezekiel, the son of God. Right? There was a group of them in history that considered him the son of God. Maybe not present day, but there was a group of them in history. Also, the pagan Arabs did. How so? They believed that the angels were the daughters of God. They believed that the angels were the daughters of Allah. This is one of their beliefs, subhanallah. This is a statement that's far removed from Allah's being perfect. So this is something that we recognize. It's not attributed to one person. The more you learn about this, the more you recognize how not to start singling any one group of people. And then here's the interesting part. When the Prophet ﷺ said that when Isa returns, he will be al-Hakim al-Adil. He will be a just ruler when he comes back. And it will be in Damascus. Isn't it interesting how the fitna turns around? I want you to just think about this from more of a high-level overview. Today, we thank Allah for this perfect religion. Everything makes sense. Allah just called the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ his slave, right? And he called all of the Anbiya his slave. They are meant to revive the ilm from Adam all the way to the end of time. Quite simple. One religion, prophet, they forget about the message. Another prophet revives the message, forgets after they pass away, or another prophet sent, revives the message. They innovate because they left for some period of time. You get what's happening? Also throughout time. And then Allah just sent Muhammad ﷺ as the final messenger, right? Sent us this book that guaranteed will not be changed. And so somebody might say, well, why couldn't Allah just do that with Adam? Why couldn't he just send the Quran with Adam and be done with it? Because the difference between the Sharia, which is the jurisprudence between all the other prophets and the Prophet Muhammad, is that the Sharia of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ will be able to adapt and apply to every generation until the day of judgment after Muhammad. You see the difference? Like if zakat was 10 or 20% of your money, you know how many people will be sitting there and trying to deduct things? Trying to figure out how to move away from it, but it's 2.5%. Literally 0.025. That's how small it is. And it's so very easy to be calculated, anybody can do that. You see the difference? In previous scriptures, it could have been 10%, as high as 10% in some of the previous scriptures. But it was relevant for their time. You see? So maybe they didn't have as many expenses as we have now. Allahu A'lam. You see, everything we have in our Quran and Sunnah is very, very clear that it's very adaptable. And that's why you find that other religions have to keep updating their books. Because their book and their Sharia was meant for a particular time. Until that next Sharia came with a different prophet. You understand what happened here? And so sometimes this is where I want you to now take a step back. I do not want you ever to sit there and criticize, like how could they just believe that God has a son? It just doesn't make any sense. You might think that, but don't criticize anyone. Because they were born in that mindset, they were raised that way, they may not know anything different. So have a discussion with them. And yet, the Prophet ﷺ told us that when the Dajjal comes, he claims to be who? Jesus. He claims to be Isa. He actually claims to be Isa. So here we are, I want you to see how everything flips. Here we are looking at the other, saying, oh, how could you not believe in this religion? Look how perfect it is, and we're waiting for Jesus. Right? Then it flips on us. The Dajjal comes, he's doing all these miracles, bringing life to death. Allah gives him that miracle, splits a man in half, puts him back, and he brings him back together. He allows vegetation to start growing in the areas that he comes. And this is at a time of great famine. And then they're going to look at us and say, you guys are idiots. Look at, you guys said a prophet needs to have miracles. What more do you want over here? And he comes in different phases. The first phase that he promotes, the Dajjal, is he's going to promote change. This is will let some really far off the beating path people start saying Obama was the Dajjal. Right? When he said, we're going to change America. And then, oh, we got him. Right here, look, here's the hadith. This is the guy. This is, Dajjal has a little curly hair. Let him grow it out a little bit. Let's see what's happening. No, see, this was messed up because it's the same guy who, after he promotes that and starts showing all these miracles, then he claims prophethood. But that's the second phase. After that second phase, he claims divinity. He actually claims that he is Al-Khaliq. He's the creator. Pharaoh didn't even go that far. The Pharaoh, at the time of Moses, which Allah condemned till the day of judgment, right? He said, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. I'm just your high Lord. You got other lords going on here. The high gold beast, that statue dog, lion looking thing, everything like that is a lord too, but I'm your high Lord. So come and talk to me. Right? And that's why Haman, his financial minister, he tells him to erect this massive thing, which some people think are pyramids. We don't know, Allahu A'lam. But he says, because why? I need to meet with the God of Moses. I had to have a one-on-one with him. See what's going on with this message of his. Right? Because he said, where is your Lord? He said, above the samawat wal ard. So he said, how much is this going to cost? Let's build this thing up. I got to go have a talk with him. He's so ignorant. You see what's happening here? But you come full scale and you look at when the Dajjal comes, it's a really scary time. And ilm is what's going to save you from now until the day you die. Why? The Prophet ﷺ told us that at the time of that fitna, at the time of that trial, what's going to save you? What's going to save you? Your adhkar. You said, wait, I never heard this one before. Let me tell you something. Your adhkar saying, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. This, the Prophet ﷺ said, actually, your belly will be filled with food if you say that at that time. That will be the miracle for the mu'mineen to be sustained at that time. Ibn Kathir, he commented on this narration. He said it is enough for a mu'min, for a Muslim, to know this narration and apply it at that time. It will suffice for them just this level of ilm, to show you how important knowledge is. Right? Because it's a big problem at that time. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he even told us that a man will have to chain You understand? Chain shackles. He will have to chain his wife and children to the side of the home so they don't go towards him. That's it. That means everybody's given up. It's over. And why is that important? Because if you look at if you look at the relationship between a mother and her children, it doesn't get stronger than that. That is the strongest relationship that can exist on earth, between a mother and a child, right? And if a mom is watching her child suffer and die right in front of her because of lack of water, because of lack of food, and then all of a sudden there's this guy in town. He's not claiming divinity. He's just claiming that he's going to solve your need. He's going to change your situation. It's worth a shot. Right? And this is where this level of iman has to be very, very intense. But it comes from ilm. It comes from ilm. Okay? And iman is also statements of the tongue, actions of the limb, and also the intention itself. So it's fully encompassed. You can't just have one. There's a lot of people say, yeah, I have my iman, but it's in here. Okay, but you have to act upon it, because that's what Allah Azza wa Jalla will judge us for. Right? And so he said, and then warn those who say Allah has begotten a son, which we mentioned as well. There's no, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, he said, مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ وَلَا لِآبَائِهِمْ. He said they have no knowledge of what they're talking about, nor their forefathers. So this is not like something they passed down with conviction. كَبُرَتْ كَلِمَةً تَخْرُجُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ. That it is it's a lie, this fat lie that exits from their mouth. إِن يَقُولُونَ إِلَّا كَذِبًا. That Allah condemns it as a pure lie, that of which they have no evidence and no knowledge of. So this is how we as Muslims have to recognize that lying and speaking about the religion when you do not know the answer is a major sin. You have to be very, very careful about that. Do not be afraid to say, I don't know. Right? This needs to be something we memorize. I don't know. So even if a Christian comes up to you and they ask you something, or a non-Muslim, or even a Muslim, you don't know the answer, simply say, I don't know. And then you come and you find out. Go to your imam or go to somebody who you can get the answer from. And make sure they give you, obviously, somebody you trust and something from the Quran and Sunnah. So then Allah says, perhaps you would kill yourself, O Muhammad, in grief over their footsteps, or for them turning away from you because they do not believe in your narration. This is the part where you have to face reality. Everyone you talk to, no matter how much you care about them, no matter how much knowledge you have, no matter how many correct answers you have, or answers to the questions that they ask you, they still might not believe. And it might hurt you inside, because it might be somebody you truly care about. It might be a family member. It might be a loved one. It might be your own neighbors, your community, because we have to care about our entire community. And you just have to say, Alhamdulillah. You have to accept reality that it's not you who guides. All of these prophets cared dearly about their entire people. All of them. All of them. Even as far as Lut, who was sent to the homosexual community, he cared deeply about his people. He did. He wanted them to leave that kind of practice and just come back to what Allah Azza wa Jalla will be pleased with. We have to be the same way. That is the sunnah of all of the prophets before us. And that's where we come back and we start studying the Quran and understanding this ilm very much so. And now Allah Azza wa Jalla says, here's something very interesting in the following verse. He says, "Inna ja'alna ma 'ala al-ardi zinatan laha linabluwahum ayyuhum ahsanu 'amala." That Allah says that in your life on this earth, Allah surrounded it with zina. Zina is not zina. Zina is an adornment. Adornments. Why, O Allah? لِنَبْلُوَهُمْ أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Because it's a test. It's a test to see how many of them will come with the best of deeds on the Day of Judgment. There are things in this dunya that almost 90% are permissible. The problem is we indulge into it so much, it takes us away from learning. There's a time and place for everything. But there are some things that people are addicted to, like social media. They're on it the latest thing was 3.5 or 4.5 hours a day, just literally gliding through these 10-second videos. And now there's weird things, right? The cats on a toilet seat, and just cats in the salah room now. No, I'm just kidding. But I could tell you that there are things that we became over obsessed with, right? Use the internet, but don't let the internet use you. You have to be very smart about how you go about living your life, right? And I remember this 2 years ago when Pokemon Go came out. It was like obsession 100%. There was people on it 24 hours, 7 days a week, and then everybody's failing and nobody knew what was happening, but they got a Pikachu or something, right? Anyhow, so this is something you have to come back and recognize. You can do these things, but find a balance in your life. And notice something very interesting, that Allah Azza wa Jal surrounded this entire dunya with adornments, and it's to test you. Some of it is halal, and some of it is haram, and a lot of it is mubah. So how do you have that balance in your life? Because when you take a step back and you look at when Allah Azza wa Jal created the paradise and hellfire, He called Jibreel. He called the angel Gabriel. And he said, Jibreel, he told him to look at paradise, and he said, Jibreel looked and he gazed inside paradise and how magnificent and the reward is inside of it. He said, Oh Allah, any one of your servants who hears of this place, he said 100% of them will enter. 100% of them will enter. And then he showed him the hardships. Then he surrounded paradise with the hardships that you have to go through to get through it. He said, Oh Allah, I'm afraid after these, very few of them will enter. So then he showed him hellfire. He said, Oh Allah, I'm sure anyone who hears of this hellfire, anyone who hears of it, 100%, none of them will come near it and enter it. None, zero. But then Allah just surrounded it with the zina of the dunya. Zinatul hayat dunya. He surrounded it with the adornments of the worldly life. And then he said, Oh Allah, I'm afraid that the majority of them will enter it. Because it's just, this is how life goes. It's a lot easier to take money in a haram way than to earn it in a halal way. It's a lot easier to have a haram relationship these days than it is to work hard on getting a halal one. You see, it's just, and it doesn't stop there, right? It's a lot easier to tell a lie to get out of the situation, to tell the truth and be faced with repercussions, right? These are things that we have to recognize, that these are all steps and trials that we're going to face in this dunya. And Allah mentioned that very, very clearly. The other thing is to have a balance. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said the mu'min, the believer, is like a bird, that his head is guiding him by the love of Allah. You truly want to meet Allah, you want to please Allah, you're being guided by it. He said, but your wings, one of them is hope and the other one is fear. If you have so much hope in Allah that you say, oh my God, Allah is Ghafur Rahim, Allah is the all-forgiving, the all-merciful, I'm good. I know it's a major sin, but Allah could forgive me for it, so I'm alright. Like you're pre-planning, I'll sin Friday, Saturday, and then I'll make tawbah. Or the best time is like Thursday, because here comes Jum'ah, and that's like quick erasing right there, and you got this formula going on. You're laughing about it, but I actually met people who actually have this formula in their head. I'm not kidding. Wallahi, I know people who smoke and do all sorts of stuff, and you tell them, well, why would you do that? Well, they say, well, yeah, sit down. You're an engineering student. This is easy math. I said, what's easy math? They said, well, I pray, and I don't miss prayers. And my prayer, Allah said that He's going to reward it between 10 and 70, even more than that. 700 even, and more than that. Allah said that in the Quran, didn't He? He said, yeah. He said, I'm not even going to multiply it. I said, okay. He said, I pray 5 times a day. 4 rak'at here, 2 rak'at. I'm not even going with the fard for you. I'm not talking about the sunnahs I pray. I said, oh, okay. He said, my sins, it's like 3 or 4 a day. He said, you do the math. I said, oh, is that how it works? He said, yeah. He said, that's very clear. Allah wouldn't have given us the equation if we weren't supposed to put it together. I said, I think it's the equation. Because then I said, then help me understand the narration where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he said that I will not even enter paradise if it wasn't Allah encompassing me and surrounding me with His mercy, with His rahmah. But this fellow over here, he wants to pass judgment on himself, say, well, imagine that. I mean, you guys, this is a real scenario. You're going to have a discussion with Allah. You're walking up, angels up, your turn, buddy. Come on up. Oh, Allah, I've saved you some time right here. Bismillah. Oh, here it is. Remember that equation? So, am I going right over here? I'm good. This is a mess. I'm serious. I want to see. And you know what's crazy is we watch this judgment. We watch it. All of the people. And this is the part that Allah Azza wa Jal, He hides for His servant. The one who really did sin in his lifetime in the dunya, and they feel bad for it. And they regret that. And they try to fix it the next time, although they might sin again. And then they try to fix again. They really are working. They're struggling. This is jihad fi sabilillah, by the way. A person who constantly is struggling to meet Allah in a good state. That is jihad fi sabilillah. Even though they may sin again. That is jihad fi sabilillah. Very, very clear in Surat At-Tawbah. You have to understand that. It's that struggle. And if you die upon that, you die in a good state. You die in a very good state. That's something that we have to continuously try. You cannot be complacent. Like this fellow that I just mentioned to you. He really laid the equation out for me. I couldn't believe it. I actually thought he was joking, by the way. He wasn't. I know you think this, right? You think it's joking. And I know a lot of people who do this stuff. They'll tell you, well, there's what did they do now? Thirsty Thursday, whatever they do on Thursday, they still do that probably. It's like a college weird thing. The shaitan, when he gets people to do a bad habit, man, it lasts real long. When people need to establish a good habit, it's very difficult. But once you establish it, man, you're in good shape. Because Aisha radiallahu anha, she told us that the Prophet said the most beloved deeds to Allah are the ones that are the most consistent, even though they're few. Even though they're few. Think about that. If you're looking to do some extra credit to make up for some of the things that you're lacking in, first, make the intention to fix the things you're lacking in, work on that, and then say, okay, I want to donate money. Take out a penny a day and donate that a day. It's literally a penny. Nobody's going to be boastful about a penny they donated. I should have went over that in the marriage course, right? You don't come home and say, Habibti. I said, yeah. You know what I did today? What? Well, I donated a penny. She's thinking like, man, did I make the wrong decision here? Like when he brings me a tulip from the neighbor's garden and he stole it and they got a Ring doorbell and they recorded him stealing it and he says, look what I got you over here. This is a person who's a cheapskate, right? But you see, you don't brag about these things. It's to create yourself a habit of doing something good. Even if it's something as small of as a penny, it's not boasting to anybody. It's between you and Allah. Because that penny will turn into a nickel, will turn into a quarter, will turn into $1. Maybe to one day Allah will give you so much wealth, you're donating $100 a day. Maybe $1,000 a day, inshallah. Why not? You say, well, you know how much? Yeah, but you could do that if you have the intention for it, right? And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, finally, in the last verse of part 8, because next is the story of the men, the young men in the cave. وَإِنَّا لَجَاعِلُونَ مَا عَلَيْهَا صَعِيدًا جُرُزًا. That he says in verse number 8, and verily we shall make all of that that is on earth a bare and dry soil without any vegetation. So after all of this beautification that you see, it will also be destroyed. And if you think about it, nothing lasts on earth. You understand that? Everything decays. Nothing lasts on earth. Even that dumb song, Diamonds Are Forever. I'm not kidding. They're forever because you think they're forever. I want you to imagine you met with somebody 1,000 years ago and you whipped out that thing. What is that? This right here is like 10 grand. And in their kind of money, they'll look at you and laugh. It wasn't valuable to them. Somehow there was a great marketing strategy. They could have done it with any stone. Somebody decided, let's do it with a diamond. Why? It was shiny. People like shiny things. Right? You could look at all throughout the movies today. They like shiny things, things that glow and they flare up. It's awesome. There's graphics. It's great. And this diamond, the more that it does all these things like a disco light, it's more expensive. It's nice. It's very clear. But tomorrow, or 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, there might be a new trend. Might be something else. Right? Things don't last on earth. And even if you think they last, you don't last on earth. You won't last. You'll be returned to the ground and you'll perish like everything else. That's not a morbid and a crazy way of thinking. That's not thinking like, oh, why have to be so salty about it? No, this is a reality. We live and you try to use your time in this dunya to better everyone around you, including yourself, as best as you can. And you hope that all of those deeds you take are good enough that Allah Azza wa Jalla will allow you to enter paradise from His mercy. Right? So there's two opposites that I didn't mention that I want to see if anybody was paying attention could actually point them out to me. The first was obvious, and I said that. The crooked path and the straight path in verses 1 and 2. Allah uses the contrast. That there's a crooked path and there's a straight path. Crookedness. There's no crookedness in this religion. Everything is answered to the T. There's two others, right? They're pretty simple, but just trying to see if anybody wants to take a crack at it. Try. The last one was easy, I just mentioned it. Right? But you're probably not thinking about it. So, yes.
Knowledge and ignorance.
Knowledge and ignorance. Where? The knowledge...
Like directly mentioned?
No, so knowledge and ignorance is one. Actually, yeah, right? Where Allah just mentioned that, bring it down in ignorance, that they don't have any knowledge of what they said. Very good. I don't have that one. I got to write that down. Okay, there's two more. Allah gave, yes.
Hope and fear.
Hope and fear, right? And then, which is warning and glad tidings. That's in verse number 2. And then in verse 7 and 8, Allah called something a zina, right? A beautification. And then in verse 8, he called it, he called it actually bare and dry. That it's going to be, all of that beauty will be completely removed. And so you see this use of opposites a lot to help you get this understanding. And that also is for us to learn that when you're seeking knowledge, make sure you seek a balanced knowledge. Like a lot of you could be very, very motivated about learning in the subject of the hellfire. And that will really set you straight, right? Like there was one brother who told me after he read that the day of judgment is 50,000 years. 50,000 years. Like 50 with 3 more zeros, and you're just standing there. And punishment after punishment, and you're resurrected, and then punishment, and renewed skin, renewed body, punishment, and punishment. He said that was enough to set him straight. Literally forever. Because for the mu'min, it doesn't feel like 50,000 years. Allah said it will feel like the time between Dhuhr and Asr. So between the 2 day prayers. Between the second and the third prayer during the day. That's how small it will feel. And then you also get to stand under the shade of Allah on that day, versus standing in the sun, blistering heat, when it's brought only about a mile distance away. Very, very scary. He said that was enough for me to recognize that I wouldn't be able to handle standing like that 50,000 years. That's why now it starts building the scene for you, and you start understanding why all of the people start merging towards Adam, the Prophet Adam, and start praising him. Oh, Adam, Allah created you with his own yad. He spoke to you. He this, he that. He taught you directly, right? وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. He taught you directly. Start praising him. Please ask Allah to call the day of judgment. They can't take it anymore. That's it. It's done. They're just busted up, right? You see how these events are happening, that the whole plane of people start turning towards him. And obviously he says, nafsi, nafsi. He said, I'm worried about myself. I'm worried about myself, right? So this is just, again, an introduction to Surat Al-Kahf. The first trial is the trial of knowledge. You guys are already doing excellent work in the sense of learning. I don't know what you guys do outside of this lecture that we have, but the minimum I could tell you that you should be looking into is books. You should be reading books. You should be pulling out books in relation to Islam, and you should be benefiting from them. And you can do that alongside your current studies in your different colleges and universities, wherever you're at. It doesn't have to be just on Tuesday. It doesn't have to be just on Friday in Khutbah al-Jum'ah. You should also carry a book with you and always try to read that as well. I don't know, the Seerah of the Prophet, start somewhere, but have a nice balanced approach to your life. Don't just be like, oh, after I finish college next, I'm starting the next degree and all that. You could do it now. You don't know if you're going to graduate. Might not be alive till that long. Take advantage of it now, okay? Because that's something that will never leave you, that type of knowledge. That is the fitna now, and I hope that we are able to recognize the importance of seeking ilm in a balanced way, and we apply it in our lifetime as well. And that also gives you the last piece of advice, is that when you're speaking to anybody about this religion, have a balanced approach in talking to them. So sometimes you talk to them about the blessings and the reward that Allah could give a person, and then you also tell them, and at the same time, you're avoiding this. You're avoiding this punishment. So you give them, so you don't know where their heart connects with, whether they're more inclined towards a reward or they're more deterred by a punishment, right? Does anybody have any questions so far? Yes.
So you mentioned in the beginning about the validity of the prophethood and how the Jews said that if these three things were answered, then it would either that means the prophet's either a true prophet or he's a false prophet.
Yeah.
But that's not was that ever addressed in the beginning of the surah, or is that somewhere else?
No, so those three questions, they're answered throughout the surah. So you'll find that towards the end is the ruh, and Allah says very clearly, very little is known about it. Because you see, that was almost a trick question for them, right? And it's pretty interesting. Had he answered, oh, that's very easy, the ruh is like this blue smoke, and then this, and he answers that, oh, we got him. Nobody knows about the ruh from the beginning of time till the end of time. Very little that Allah revealed about the ruh. So the third one was almost like a trick question, and Allah still told them. This is very little known about it, that nobody was given this ilm before. So it's not like any of the previous prophets were told about it. But some of the previous prophets were told about the people of the cave. Right? That was a glorious story. And also about Dhul Qarnayn, which we'll cover, I think. How many of you is the president of the MSA in this room?
He just left.
He just left? Oh, okay. Well, MSA Shura people here?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of benefits you guys can learn in terms of leadership when you study Dhul Qarnayn. And by the way, all of you will apply this in your life one way or another. So we will cover leadership in one of the lectures. So there's about 6 themes, if I remember correctly, in Surat Al-Kahf. I essentially have to pick 3 of the 6. So I'll look into them and see which ones we can apply. We can apply all of them, but I think at least in terms of choosing 3 of the 6, I'll have to look into that, which ones we wind up doing. But they are all answered in the Quran. Yeah. Who knows who Cyrus, I just said it, there it goes. Cyrus the Great is what most of the ulama think is Dhul Qarnayn. Anyhow, yeah.
Based on the same story about the part where the Rasul doesn't say inshallah, I've told that to a few of my students and they asked the Rasul doesn't make any mistakes, right? So I didn't know how to answer that question.
Oh, very good. So the answer to that is very clear. The Prophet ﷺ, he is given wahi, which is revelation, and a lot of times there are some times where Allah Azza wa Jal allowed him to also ihkum, like pass judgment. If that judgment was in line with the same wahi, then that continued. If he made a mistake, then Jibreel would correct him immediately. So there's no mistake in the revelation, that's one. Number 2, as far as mistakes in terms of sins, what would be considered a sin or a mistake for a prophet is not considered a sin generally speaking, but they're held to a way different standard, right? So forgetting to say inshallah, anyone here going to get punished for it? No. That's by agreement of the scholars. But the Prophet ﷺ, it's like he knows better and he needs to be held to a different standard. That's why Allah Azza wa Jalla reprimanded him so he doesn't forget. Sulaiman did the same thing. When in one night, and a lot of the sisters now are like, whoa, what's going on here? But in one night he loved fighting for the cause of Allah, standing against oppression and tyranny and things like that. So he said, tonight I'm going to sleep with 100 of my wives. He had 100 wives. He was Sulaiman, yeah. And so in one night, and he said, and they will give birth to 100 soldiers. 100 soldiers, right? What was the problem? He forgot to say inshallah. Now, by the way, don't ask me about this fellow's stamina and Allah. It was a miracle, right? That's a pure miracle from Allah. And in another narration, it was 70. I don't know if that helps, but anyhow, so 70 means a great number, and all the prophets had multiple wives. That's not the subject matter anyway, right? So out of all of them, one of them became impregnated, and she gave birth to a defected child who died shortly after that. And Allah reprimanded him in the Quran. That story is mentioned indirectly, and it says because he forgot to say inshallah. And had he said inshallah, he would have. The Prophet ﷺ said all of his wives would have became pregnant, and he would have given birth to 100 men, 100 soldiers, right? So it's not that they don't make mistakes. It's that they're held to a different standard, right? And obviously, Allah Azza wa Jal clearly said Adam sinned. But why wasn't it a major sin for Adam? For a few reasons. One, he forgot. So Allah Azza wa Jal forgives people who forget. The difference also is Allah very clearly said in the Quran that He forgave Adam. Why? Because you look at the reaction. And this is where some of the scholars, you'll look at the story of Adam, they'll say, we actually don't know how long Iblis waited until Adam was given the command that not to come near this tree, until he actually started making waswasa to him and his wife to get close to it. Right? We don't know that length. Some of them said it could have been thousands of generations, thousands of years, because we know he lived 1,000 years on earth. We don't know how long he lived up there in paradise, right? It's unknown to us. So they said the fact that Adam never ever witnessed any creation of Allah taking a qasam, swearing in Allah's name on a lie. He never witnessed that. And so Iblis takes an oath saying that you can trust me. I'm going to teach you how to worship Allah frequently, non-stop, like the angels do. And yet he was created in a much better fashion than them. And that's what he said, wow, this person can't be lying about that. He took an oath in the name of Allah. So that was new to him. And that's why Allah mentioned it very clear that he is aduwan mubin, that he is a clear enemy for you, O Adam. And this is something we all have to learn from, you see. So the thing is, the prophets, they do not make any mistakes whatsoever in terms of the revelation at all. But that also shows that these other mistakes shows a human side to them, right? But they'll never be major sins. They'll never be major sins. Like it'll never be zina, it'll never be alcohol, it'll never be lying, right? Lying is a major sin. It'll never be, and you can think about them, whatever else comes to mind, right? They've never done shirk, even before being told that they're commissioned as a prophet. They've never participated in shirk. You can look at that, at the history of all of them. Right, so you get the difference here. So infallibility, the scholars debated on what that meant. Some of them said, no, they don't sin, period. But that's not that, kind of contradicts that, right? But it just shows that that's the human element to it. Yes?
But doesn't that just make the prophets and human beings because they do
Yeah.
and that's also like part of like the root word of insan, which is to
Nisyan, yeah.
So I think that's what makes prophets not like why we believe in them is because we do relate to them and like we see the
Human element to them. Yeah, yes, and the only thing I want just to caution you about is just slight, only because the more that we try to do that relation is what led some previous nations to invent lies about them. That's the reason that I asked some people of knowledge from other faiths, why do you believe that the Prophet Lot had incestation with his daughters? Why do you believe that Abraham slept with a prostitute? Why do you believe that Noah was a drunkard and he just lied? Oh, there's this flood coming, and everyone ignored him. The reason is they said that this is very clear evidence that they're human. And we all do those mistakes. Did you see that part? So I just want to take a step back to say, well, time out. If you look at what they did in our aqidah, in our theology, they didn't do a mistake. They just were held to a different standard. You see the difference? That's the key thing we want to make sure to differentiate. Because even abasa wa tawalla, when Allah Azza wa Jal corrects the Prophet, abasa means urbus. That's this part here. All the Prophet did when the blind man came to him and he was trying to address this high group of individuals who, if any one of them accepted Islam, thousands of people will accept Islam. But a blind man comes to him, Ibn Maktoum, and then he wants to ask him, address something about the religion, and the Prophet just did this. Just urbus, he just did this. He didn't say, oh my God, or the sucking your teeth, like everybody does today. Not even that, just that. Allah just said, and he's blind. But he's blind, didn't see that, right? But Allah just said, oh Prophet of Allah, oh slave of Allah, Allah is aware of what you've done, and even that for you, you're not supposed to do that. You see that? But if literally, anyone who did that here, you just be like, wow, so kind. And they're going to come to him after, hey, let's get one-on-one now. What's going on here? But for the Prophet ﷺ, he was even reprimanded even for that. You see the difference? So anything they did is not considered a sin on our side, but they're held to a little bit of a different standard. Right? You can, and you can understand that because they're sitting there seeing and hearing Jibreel. They're sitting there seeing all these miracles, right? And sometimes Allah Azza wa Jal revealed those miracles to some of the companions around them. Like one time, some of the companions saw Jibreel in the human form, and after he was talking to him and he left, one of the companions addressed him and he said, was that Dihya al-Kilbi? And then he said, you saw him? You saw the man that was next to me? And then they said, yeah. He said, that wasn't Dihya, that was Jibreel. So some companions actually saw Jibreel in the human form, which is a phenomenal miracle, right? An amazing blessing for them. But that's something to explain to them, inshallah, that they could better grasp. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Sold. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. العصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.